Dose of Terror is a semi-regular feature that searches for that elusive creature, the perfect Bigfoot film. And believe you me, it's harder to find than you'd think. This week we have another trio of tales about our furry friend of the forest, so let's squatch on. Bigfoot vs. D.B. Cooper is new, streaming on Tubi. It's directed by DeCoteau and written by DeCoteau and Harvey Shaiman. Starring a bunch of dudes without shirts and the voices of Linnea Quigley and Eric Roberts and Bigfoot. It's 1971 and D.B. Cooper has committed the perfect crime. After having hijacked a plane and ransomed a large amount of money, he parachuted from said plane and was never heard of again. But what if D.B. Cooper, as he escaped over the vast forests of Washington, found himself in the path of the legendary Bigfoot? As soon as I saw DeCoteau's name on the title card, I should have known what I was getting into. DeCoteau is not a good filmmaker. Well, I don't know about that. Let's just say his films aren't for me, and I don't think I'm his target audience. DeCoteau is the mastermind behind such films as Evil Exhumed, Asian Ghost Story, and 90210 Shark Attack, and he has a catalog of 182 movies under his belt, including a few Puppet Master films and other full moon features. But what the filmmaker is infamous for is his penchant to make films featuring numerous young men walking around shirtless in the forest and then changing into even skimpier clothes as the film goes on. I've unfortunately stumbled across a couple of DeCoteau's films in my critical endeavors, all of them leaving me with the sense of desiring those precious minutes back after watching. Bigfoot vs. D.B. Cooper is more of the same. The film begins with a 10-minute chore of watching a shirtless kid walking, interspersed with a few POV shots of what one can assume is Bigfoot. It's literally scene after scene of this kid walking towards the camera, over and over, set to repetitive synth music. After that slog and the title card, the kid eventually arrives at a house, and as he approaches the door, 5 guys, all shirtless save for one, answer the door and invite the wandering lad in. No joke. Next, we get a pair of runners, shirtless of course, jogging through the same stretch of the forest, while the same POV shots are shown of us stalking Bigfoot for another 10 minutes. That's 20 minutes down. Meanwhile, DeCoteau remembers there has to be some kind of story here, and we get a little backstory about D.B. Cooper and his famous heist. But only for a brief while, because we have to get back to the cabin where the boys are getting ready to go hunting with what looks to be BB guns. This is where each of the boys, one after another, go up the stairs, enter their individual rooms, strip to their underwear, and strike multiple poses in front of the mirror with their guns. Each of these segments are the same and last for about 5 minutes, each with the camera slowly panning over the half-naked dude's body. It was in this moment, though I had inklings of it before, that I regretted clicking on this film on Tubi. I was thankful, though, that I didn't have to pay for it. Look, I get it. This is cheesecake for gay men and maybe a few desperate women. It's sort of the equivalent of porn, but isn't there an internet for that? The thing is, there's no nudity save for bare chests, so I don't even think a gay guy would be interested in this. The film seems to be an excuse for the director to get a bunch of guys into a secluded locale and have them strip one by one in front of the camera over and over again. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Even if the lads were replaced by curvy ladies, DeCoteau's lack of self-awareness and pacing would get tedious after a while. There's even a scene where Bigfoot, ever so slowly, tickles the muscular abs of one of his victims before punching a hole through him. The true sin of Bigfoot vs. D.B. Cooper is that I really like the premise of the movie. What if a guy thinks he's getting away with the crime of the century only to find himself face to face with Bigfoot? That sounds like a damn fun time. Someone should make a movie about that. But this is not that movie. This is hardly a movie. This idea is way too good for a film like this. Though top billed in the credits, Linnea Quigley and Eric Roberts offer only short voiceovers. Hell, Linnea only gets one line. The Bigfoot suit is baggy and looks like something bought at a second-hand Spirit Halloween store. If DeCoteau would have spent half the time on the Bigfoot costume as he did zooming on the cast's abs, it might have looked a skosh better. And I was flabbergasted to find out that 2 people wrote this movie. How? How? And all of that is why I'm giving Bigfoot vs. D.B. Cooper the lowest score I can imagine for a Bigfoot movie, and that's one single toe. Unless your idea of a good time is to stare at abs and men in their underwear for a little over an hour, steer clear of this stinker at all costs. It barely registers as an actual movie and teeters on the edge of G-rated porn. Stranded is streaming on Tubi. It's directed by Shawn Burkett and written by Shawn Burkett and Cheyenne Gordon. Three siblings take a road trip to Boggy Creek in Fouke, Arkansas to sort through their recently deceased father's property. But they break down on the way in the middle of the night and come face to face with the legendary Bigfoot. Stranded is a low-budget film, so don't expect much from this one. Still, I have to commend filmmakers Shawn Burkett and Cheyenne Gordon for at least trying to build an interesting story around a typical Bigfoot flick. Centering this one around the strained relationships between the three siblings really is rather compelling, especially when the sun falls and the night comes alive around their broken-down car. While the acting is not top tier, the three siblings, played by Dale Miller, Brittany Blanton, and Scott Gillespie, try to make the banter comfortable and pointed, as none of these siblings really want to be in a car together, but are forced to be there due to their familial ties. The monster itself? Well, it's a guy in a baggy hairsuit, and obviously so. The mouth is articulated, which is pretty cool, and they tried to make the costume multi-layered, made of different shades of brown and gray, which is an added effort most Bigfoot films feel isn't necessary. This Bigfoot is quite ferocious, and with most of the film taking place in one night in a foggy and thickly forested swamp, the atmosphere is established rather well. I'm going to give Stranded 1 foot and 4 toes. I'm feeling generous today. It's low budget, but there was more of an attempt for story, and the mood was nice and gloomy. It's not a great Bigfoot film, but I've seen far, far worse. Bigfoot: The Lost Coast Tapes is streaming on Tubi. It was directed by Corey Grant and written by Brian O'Kane and Brian Kelsey. Having seen my fair share of Bigfoot films, I know it's difficult to come up with a new premise for the subgenre that pulls one in. Though Bigfoot: The Lost Coast Tapes has its rough edges, I do have to give it credit for coming up with a winning premise, and sometimes that's just enough to get a recommendation out of me. Starting out with what I liked about the film, I really dug the way things were set up from the beginning. Drew Roush plays Sean Reynolds, a non-believer and disgraced news reporter, recovering from a mental breakdown and wanting to reclaim fame by uncovering a hoax concerning a dead Bigfoot in a cooler. After seeking out the hilljack named Carl, played by Frank Ashmore, who claims to have the body in a cooler, he forces the camera crew and hosts to wear blindfolds, give up their cell phones, and pay $75,000 in order to get footage of the corpse. But Carl has a flair for the dramatic. He puts off the reveal and prefers to tell stories about the inhabitants of the woods around him, much to the ire of the impatient camera crew. Though I've seen many Bigfoot films, this premise feels fresh. It also seemed plausible that, if a Bigfoot was found, one would be extra careful in keeping it safe from other Bigfoot, and more importantly, the press. Approaching this film from that angle was a decision I liked. I also love the ending, which takes somewhat of an unexpected turn. Though the poster suggests that there may be another threat in the woods other than Bigfoot, I wasn't sure what that meant. The ending does make sense in the continuity of the story, and once again distinguishes this film from the slew of other Bigfoot films that go the typical monster in the woods route. I won't reveal it here, but the ending worked for me. My problems with the film have to do with the choices of actors. While lead Drew Roush gets a pass since he is the personification of the douche anchorman looking for a money shot to get him back into the big time, some of the other actors, the sound guy in particular, felt like they were reciting lines and setting up lines for others in the crew rather than the comfortable dialogue that sells most of these found footage style films. Though the film feels over-scripted at times, there are nice beats of tension. I especially liked the overly dramatic Carl, who keeps procrastinating on revealing the corpse of the Bigfoot. Bigfoot: The Lost Coast Tapes feels scripted, but it feels like an actual found footage film. There's no additional music added or production cheats that tear you out of the illusion that this footage is something discovered in its purest form. It has all of the same pitfalls that most found footage films of its time, Namely, there's no reason the camera should keep rolling or fall into the exact spot to capture what needs to be captured to make it an actual story that makes sense. This one also has the two most cliched beats of a found footage movie, that being the wreck drag away from the camera and the up-nose confessional from the Blair Witch. These two sins are unforgivable to me as it reeks of unoriginality. Despite all of that, I thought there was enough to like about Bigfoot the Lost Coast tapes to give it 2 foots and 3 toes. The original premise is what saves this one from being your run-of-the-mill Bigfooter, but its cliched found footage moments knocks Bigfoot, the Lost Coast tapes, down a few notches. Well, there you have it, 3 Bigfoot films. None of them are perfect. Hell, most are unwatchable. It proves that it truly is hard to find a great Bigfoot film, but as with my belief in the existence of the cryptid itself, I want to believe he's out there. Check on my website for a comprehensive list of all of the Bigfoot films that I've reviewed over the last few years, and their rankings in foots and toes. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside.